Okay, and I am going to bring up Thumper. He, him from Maine wants to know why would one race tend to act different? Races, is there a genetic or biological reason that people act differently, I guess? Let's see what he has to say. Hi, Thumper. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jim and Kelly. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I basically just have an interesting question. Let's suppose that no Europeans had ever come to America, and the natives had continued to act as they always did. You know, they just buffalo rug and maybe a birch bark canoe. Do you think they ever would have tried to invent the wheel?
That's a really good question.
It is a good question, and it was invented?
One race. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm over talking. Sorry.
No, you're okay. You're okay. It was invented by some of the early Central and South American tribes, but they only put them on toys for some reason, which I always found weird. You know why? And there are little toys that look like they were meant to be pulled behind a child with little tiny wheels on them, and yet they never thought to make big wheels for carts. I always thought that was weird.
Yeah. I mean, it just, why would some people just be satisfied and happy for the simple life, you know, that the Native Americans had, and other people are really interested in making their life easier, or what drives them to invent things? You know, it's kind of a strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets even. Yeah, you get even stranger when you look.
Laziness is the.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you look at like China versus Venice or Italy or Europe and exploration, you can make the case that the Pacific is bigger than the Atlantic, but at least one Chinese ship made it all the way to Africa. And we know there was some trade between China, Japan, and the Pacific Islands, not a lot. But there was some. And so why did the Chinese just decide not to go as far? Who knows? I think some of it may be related to overland trade and you can't get heavy. It's hard to get heavy things overland, right? It's easier to do that with a watercraft. You can get a lot heavier stuff on a boat than you can in the back of a truck or that kind of thing. So I think part of it is that, right? The need to trade, but also scarcity comes into play, I think, and also abundance. Do you have the time to devote to people thinking about things? Do you have the time to have them be philosophers? You have to have enough of an economy and enough abundance to support someone who is getting paid to think instead of getting paid to produce food. So there's probably a whole bunch of things that come into it that we just haven't thought about. Did religion have part of it, wanting to expand and that? Sure, probably. But I think it was some combination of abundance and scarcity that came together, along with the recognition that we're trading all the way to India from Europe, and it would be faster. We could get more stuff if we could do it by ship than do it by land, right? So greed probably had. So.
Yeah. I was going to say that laziness drives invention. There's the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention, but humans are inherently lazy, and we're smart enough to figure out ways for work to be done with as little bit of actual physical work on our own part as possible. So I've always said that the laziest people are usually the ones that invent the best stuff. So
right.
Yeah.
Also, too, terrain has something to do with it, right? The Romans built roads so they could put stuff on wheels and transport troops, make it easier to walk. But also, once you have good roads, it makes it easier to have wheels. Whereas in really rough country, like in the desert Southwest, northern Arizona, Utah, the Rockies, wheels aren't going to do you a lot of good there because they've got to be tough enough to survive being rolled over rocks, things like that. It's also maybe harder to roll over a rock than the travois that they were using. That's a possibility. And then, in some of the other conditions, maybe wheels just don't work as well when they're made out of the materials that primitive folks had. Wood, stone, I didn't have rubber. Skins, things like that, probably just didn't have it. And then, Rome was very expansionist and built roads. And once you have roads where it's easy, I think wheels become more of a thing that work. So I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of, I don't think it's any one thing, right? Roman roads helped quite a bit. Chinese also had roads, but they didn't really need to. I don't know that they traded with India. I know they had, there was some trade, but I don't know if they traded as much. And I say India, I mean all along that path, right? Not just India itself, but all along it. So, yeah, it's hard to say I don't think it was one thing. I think it was a whole combination of things.
Yes.
I know one of the things that drove civilization quicker in what we consider the old world was geography, because the old world went from east to west for a very long way. So plants that would grow well in, say, Western Europe would still grow well in Western Asia. That was as long as they were around the same latitude and longitude. And if you look at a map of the Americas, it's mostly north and south. So you didn't have that same ability for that to happen. Also, the old world had better pack animals that we didn't have in the new world. And that really drove civilization a lot there too. And as far as people wanting to get back to the simple way of life, I think that still a lot of people want to do that. I think we see that all the time. People wanting simple, small houses or move out to the woods and live off the land.
Yeah, I agree. That's just, if you're happy and you have enough, there's really no need to try and have more than enough in many cases. So.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the high population and the different needs.
Mm-hmm. And the needs of wheels that are made out of stone and wood, they have needs too. All kinds of things I think come into play. There's a really good book called Sapiens that talks about how the spread of civilization follows the spread of grain, and how grain kind of spreads throughout the world. And that's kind of an interesting little concept too, is, you've got to have a food source that can produce abundant amounts of food. And rice produces the most, but it's the hardest to produce because of the rice paddies and things like that, whereas grain will grow almost anywhere if it's got the right soil conditions, et cetera. So you can get grains, not just wheat grain, but grains in general to grow all around the world. And if that is true, that civilization follows grains, because grains give you a lot of food to produce so that you can focus on other things, and you can allow people to specialize in trades and things like that. So if you're a nomadic tribe, every potential hunter has to go hunt, because hunting's not a sure thing. Whereas then you have gatherers, and gatherers also not a sure thing. So those are all things I think. Read the book Sapiens. I think that might give you some really cool stuff to look at and to think about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Thumper?
You've given me a lot to think about, and I really admire you guys a lot, and I hope to speak to you again sometime.
Thanks, so do we.